hosted by Tangent Solutions. Today's presenter is Alistair Pugin, the head of Tangent Cloud. He is an Azure and Office Apps and Services Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, a blogger, podcaster, speaker, and strategic advisor. His role at Tangent Solutions is to drive cloud enablement and strategy into Tangent's extensive customer base and onboard new customers throughout South Africa. With a strong focus on Microsoft collaboration solutions, he blends this with his long-standing knowledge management experience to uniquely position Tangent as an all-up Microsoft 365 Teams collaboration and calling partner in Sub-Saharan Africa. Alistair will post additional information with regards to the various topics in the chat box to the right of the video and presentation. If you have any questions, you can ask them by making use of the same chat box. Your questions, however, will not appear in the chat. They will be recorded, collated, and answered in due course, and you will receive an email with the answers to the questions not answered in the presentation. Both the webinar recording and presentation will also be available for you at the end of the webinar. And now hand you over to Alistair Pugin.
So Microsoft Teams for remote workers, what is it really about? We feel we use it inside of Tangent Solutions, and we've been using it, I think, for the last 2 years since it was launched. It's been an indispensable product for us because we've got not only people in the office, but also people, staff that work at customer sites, and the way we keep in contact with our staff is through Microsoft Teams. It's been the collaboration and productivity application of choice for not only Tangent Solutions, but also for pretty much all our customers. In fact, in the last 2 weeks, Teams' daily active usage has grown from 32 to 42 million active users, and Microsoft has actually had to increase capacity, and I think the last stats I saw was, I think, by 770%. And for those out there who understand how cloud works, Teams actually runs on top of Azure. So that should give you an indication of how well the product stack actually scales. And it's fascinating to me because I come from a technical background to see how easy it was for Microsoft to take on 12 million additional users within a week. There was some degradation of service on the platform, but nothing too crazy where the platform was down for longer than 10-15 minutes. So in today's world, in the wake of this pandemic that the entire planet is faced with, companies across the globe, we've been inundated with calls from customers that were initially too scared or too apprehensive to move to the cloud because everyone still believes that your perimeter network is made of brick and mortar. In today's world, it's no longer that. Everyone lives inside of the cloud, and we've had customers knock on our door, say, please move us to the cloud. Please show us how we can collaborate and communicate and improve our productivity from wherever we are working from. And today, that's your couch. That's where you should be in today's world. And with that being said, we would like to take you through how to use Teams in your organization. I think that's the first thing, what the Teams experiences are like, and also how to enrich productivity using Microsoft Teams. And it's really because we feel that organizations will be able to improve productivity, and it's not just because we now have to work from home, but Teams should be seen as a productivity enrichment tool with all the features that are available. It's not just a product like Zoom where it's about video calling. There's so much more to Teams than just having an online meeting. The overview today for what we're talking about, why Microsoft Teams. I think it's important to understand what the platform looks like, what the platform is, and what's available to users and organizations when they start rolling out Microsoft Teams to all the users. Teams meeting experiences, I think it's important to understand what that's like, how you can communicate with not only people inside of your organization, but people also outside of your organization. The next thing I want to look at is Teams calling. So how do you take your traditional your traditional VoIP system and actually integrate it into Teams, where you can replace your outdated PABX or PBX, like they're calling it today, and actually use Teams as a telephony service, not only as a meeting experience. And last but not least, just some final thoughts on where the world is, what we are doing from working from home. Strangely enough, at the end of last year, there was some marketing noise being made by all the pundits around predicting what's going to happen in 2020. And strangely enough, they talked about 2020 will be the year of remote working. Little did they know. Now, why Teams? I think it's important to understand why Teams and what it brings. And Microsoft is really the hub for teamwork. Well, Microsoft Teams is. And it forms part of the Microsoft 365 stack. Microsoft has just renamed a few of their products, dropping the Office part of 365, and they've actually started calling it Microsoft 365. Because it's really about a holistic approach to your IT stack and how humans interact with technology. I think they used to call it human interface computing, and Teams is the poster child for how humans are now starting to interact with what I like to call work objects. In the old days, we used to have the 3 Ps, and we always talked about 3 Ps: people, process, and paper. And back then, I think it was 2003 when I got involved in knowledge management solutions, we talked about people, process, and work objects, be it a Excel spreadsheet, be it a Word document, or be it a presentation like the one that you are consuming today. It's really about how do we provide people in our organization with a platform for working more efficiently with the processes and the work objects that they're actually touching, be it an audio transcript of a recording, be it pictures of something that happened. There's a plethora of ways of working with tools, with products inside of your organization, and also the objects that you need to work with every day. And Microsoft provides that functionality through the use of Microsoft Teams. First and foremost, we all used to what I like to call chat-based information management. If you do not have a chat app on your phone, how are you communicating? My 84-year-old mother is on Facebook, and she's on Facebook out of necessity. She's never needed a smartphone, but about 2 years ago, she said, "Al, can you please give me a phone with a touchscreen?" because she wanted to track my movements on Facebook. And she learned how to send SMSs using WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger and all of those tools. So that's the first thing. So how do we communicate more efficiently inside of the organization, not only from one to many, but from a one-to-one perspective? And if you look at Microsoft Teams being the hub for teamwork, it's really around that, working inside of a team. So the first protocol we have is how we manage chats, how people can utilize the tooling to actually have conversations with not only their team, but also with individual stakeholders inside of the organization. The next thing is really about having meetings. So how do teams communicate more efficiently inside of the organization? And Teams is the perfect platform for today's world. Anyone can connect to a meeting using their standard webcam. Generally, I think for the last 10 years, most notebooks have shipped with webcams. And for me, I like to switch my webcam on. Everyone's afraid of switching on their webcam because you don't know if they're working in PJs. In today's world, I suppose a lot of people are working in their PJs. We've seen quite a few videos of hosts and anchors of news shows where their kids have walked past or something weird. So be very wary when you actually connect via Teams in a Teams meeting and you're switching your webcam on. The next thing, you can use Teams for calling, and we'll delve into direct routing and how to configure calling plans for Microsoft Teams later on in this presentation. And naturally, being able to conversate and communicate with not only your teams, but with also individual stakeholders, it's important to be able to share files that you are working with. And Microsoft has brought the rich files experience from a product like SharePoint and OneDrive into the Teams view. So now you are able to collaborate, communicate, and co-author content inside of your organization using Teams, where two people can actually work inside of Teams on the same document. They have the same experience as if they were editing a document on their local Office Pro Plus application like Word or PowerPoint or Excel, and they get the same user experience and the same fidelity that they would if they were working with online versions of Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. And also, you don't need the Teams thick client to work with Teams. You can actually use Teams inside of a browser. It's supported by Safari, it's supported by Chrome, it's supported by Microsoft Edge or the new Chromium, and you can actually work with Teams as if it was actually on your desktop. Last but not least, it's always important to have a look at what the app ecosystem and what the process management is sitting behind a product like Microsoft Teams. And what Microsoft has actually done, for the longest time they've been working with building a single API. So you tap into the Office Graph API and you can start building applications. Those SharePoint developers that are still out there, they can now build rich applications using the same SharePoint framework and publish it to Teams. And what you can also do is bring in a plethora of external apps the way you'd normally do it with products like Slack. There's an app connector and there's a bunch of published apps that now actually sit in the Teams App Store. So not only can you get your developers in your organization to create these applications, you can use third-party apps like Asana, Trello, the old Wanderlust, which is now to do. And there is, I think, about 200 or 300 applications available to Teams right now. And it's the top 200-300 applications that products like Slack use. That's now available to you. And you can, you can actually surface that directly inside of Teams. And your users no longer have to alt-tab into another application, have to log in with those credentials and all of those things. They can actually surface that application and, and you can pass through your authentication to that application for seamless single sign-on. What else can Teams do for your business? I think the first thing is to talk about transforming your workplace and transforming the way you collaborate. You can now share content more efficiently because it's actually stuck inside of Teams. And Teams is part of the Office 365 tenant, and it utilizes all the back-end components of Office 365. The membership service is Office 365 groups. For those that have worked with groups inside of Exchange, it's the same thing. So users that live inside of Office 365 groups have the specific permissions to that specific team. And that is the way you manage permissions and being able to transform the way you collaborate now. So think about the old days, right? You would dial into a meeting using Skype or Zoom or Cisco WebEx, and you'd have a conversation about a document, and then you'd have to email that document to everyone later, and there'd be 12 versions of it, and no one would know what the latest version of the truth is. Working inside of Microsoft Teams, you can now provide users with features like co-authoring, where everyone works on the same document at the same time, and you can track the changes and all of those things. And that's vitally important when it comes to working with a product like Teams for improving your collaboration inside of the organization. The opportunity cost it takes to perform a specific task in your organization. And that ties into business processes and how to become more efficient utilizing Teams to streamline process management inside of your organization. And if you look at the rest of the tools that's available to you as part of Office 365, because Teams is an Office 365 product, you can now surface all those applications like Planner so that you can do proper task management. You can now use products like Power Automate, Power Apps. You can also use Power BI to surface rich information around dashboarding and balanced scorecards. You can automate your processes using Power Automate. So think about approval processes around, I want to publish a document that needs to go out to a customer. I can now add it to, and I prefer to call it Microsoft Flow. I can add it to a flow, and that then goes off to my line manager, and my line manager approves the document, and that document then gets sent to the customer. So there's a lot of ways of utilizing the tool, not just for chat, but also for working with processes inside of your organization. And what Microsoft likes to talk about Teams being, and I call it the everything source, right? Because Microsoft has been touting it as the single pane of glass. This is your new digital dashboard. And this is the new front door into your organization. And I think it's very important that we have a look at that and how organizations are working with Microsoft Teams as that's the doorway into our back-end ecosystem, where all our applications reside, where all our communication tools reside. It's how we consume information, and it's how we produce information. And it's one single platform that talks to pretty much all Office 365 products. So you surface Office Pro Plus, well, the online versions of Office Pro Plus. So you surface Word, you surface PowerPoint, you surface Excel inside of Teams. It gives you that view. You use Planner, you use OneNote for note-taking, you use Microsoft Whiteboard, you use SharePoint for file storage, you use OneDrive to sync that file back to your desktop if you want to work in Windows Explorer. You then use Power BI inside of Teams to surface rich analytics of your back-end ERP or supply chain management system. And lastly, you use Office 365 groups to manage your permissions. And that's the total sum, pretty much. I mean, with the exception of Microsoft Forms, that pretty much covers the stack of Office 365 applications. And it's definitely the single platform into all of the other products that you have in the backend. And what this means to us when we start working with these applications, be it on your desktop, be it inside of a browser, or be it on a phone or a tablet, you get exactly the same experience that you would normally have inside of the Teams application on all your devices throughout your organization. So people don't only have to be reliant on having to open up a desktop machine or open up a laptop to work with the tooling. You can now work with it on the go. Not that anyone's going to go anywhere besides their patio or the garden for 27,000 laps that you can get 5 kilometers, do a 5 kilometer run. But you can use any tool, product, platform to consume this information, be it a laptop, be it a mobile phone, or be it a tablet. It's available to everyone on any platform. And what's important to note, and this is probably where I spend most of my time working with these products, is because it's ring-fenced inside of Office 365, you get the richness of the security features available to you inside of Office 365. And no one really looks at that much. They go, well, Teams. But for me, I'm always very wary of having to make sure that you close the gates behind people when it comes to being able to share content, because everyone that's ever used Dropbox will go, well, I'm going to share this file with you, right? And I'm going to right click and say share, and I'm going to send you the link. But who worries about that when it comes to your perimeter network? Because your perimeter network is no longer just that bricks and mortar and that VPN that people have been using to get inside of your building. It's now extended and it's sitting in the cloud. So your perimeter network's actually been extended to what's available to you in the cloud. And Microsoft provides you with a rich, I think they spend about, I think the last time I checked was $4 billion a year on security. And you get all of those features with Microsoft Teams. Being able to do retention and disposition scheduling when it comes to being able to delete files and delete teams, switching on data loss prevention for your organization, which includes Teams, making sure that documents are not shared with the wrong organizations or shared to a Gmail account through conditional access policies and information protection, and also making sure that Teams doesn't get infected with Trojans and viruses by using advanced threat protection inside of your Office 365 tenant. What's nice about that is Microsoft's actually split the security center. Well, it used to be called the Security and Compliance Center. They actually split it off into the Security Center and the Compliance Center. And now you've got stuff like a compliance score, you've also got a security score, and you've also got a productivity score, which you can use as metrics from an IT admin perspective to manage and measure what's happening with your team's infrastructure. So where are people sharing content? Who are they sharing it with? Is this at risk because you've got two different logins, and we call that impossible travel as a policy, where someone logs in from where they are, and if their identity has been compromised, you might find that someone has got their identity and they're logging in from, and I always use the same example, a coffee shop in the Ukraine. And I know it sounds bad, but you'll be able to track usage and you'll be able to do predictive assessments of what might happen if an identity has been compromised. So what are organizations actually doing with this product out there? I mean, we want to compare it to how we live in South Africa, but I think it's important to understand where the world is going and what top brands are doing with the product. So here's a quick video on what L'Oreal is actually doing and utilizing with Microsoft Teams.
Our founder, Eugene Schuller, used to say, a company is more than just assets or equipment. It's first about people, people, and people. And I believe that this is truer than ever.
L'Oreal is reinventing itself all the time. We are in the business of beauty. We represent more than 43 international brands. We want the best for our employees.
The new way to manage innovation is to have real engaged communities bound by the same goal. We face the challenge to move faster and to innovate differently, and for that we rely on Microsoft Teams.
I'm in charge of all our e-commerce websites. Digital market is moving super fast. It's 24 hours every day. One of the big challenges that we have is that we're in a lot of different countries. What's hard is to make sure that you're collaborating flawlessly. Managing 7,000 assets, 200 videos, plus all the text. Having one solution to gather all this, plus to be able to communicate on those assets within Teams, that's a game changer for us, and it's making a big difference.
Microsoft 365 and Teams came perfectly at the right moment. It absolutely revolutionized the way we operate and also what we can offer to our consumers.
I think it's important. I hope you enjoyed that video. I think it's important to understand where Microsoft Teams has come from and where it's evolved. I mean, Microsoft Teams is about almost 3 years old. But it's interesting to see the growth at how fast Microsoft Teams has grown over the last 2 years. It was announced at Ignite 2018. And when you look at all the features that have been released over the last 2 years, is it 2 years? It's not even 2 years. Ignite 2018 was in September of 2018. So it's not even 18 months. Yeah, it's not even 18 months. And the product has come a long, long way. And what we're seeing now is when we look at what features are available to you today, you've got private channels. So you can create a team and you can have a private channel inside of a team. It was probably the most requested feature on User Voice for all of Microsoft products with over 26,000 votes for it. You've got cross-channel posting, so you can literally select which channels to post to when you want to push information through. You've got an announcement section, you've also got priority notifications, and you've got read receipts inside of Teams. So if you wanted to see what people were doing, or if you're having a conversation with someone and you want to make sure that they've actually read it, you can now enable those features. What's coming, what's actually available right now, pin channels. The biggest problem with Teams currently is the plethora of teams and channels that get created, and for you to scroll through all the teams that you belong to when you only want to see information about a specific channel, you can now use pinned channels. A multi-window, being able to pop out a window, so you've got chat over here and then you've got video over there, that is coming. Message extensions, it's not yet available. Outlook and Teams integration, where you can actually email a team, which is quite cool. So think about being able to draft an email and then emailing it to a team and having that rich text HTML inside of Teams. You can now do that. Because a lot of the times, people don't necessarily work inside of Teams. They work inside of the application that they're happy with. So if they're creating a document in Windows Explorer, that's where they live. If they're working with documents inside of Outlook, you'll find that they'll mail a document to themselves because that's where they keep their documentation. You might find that people prefer to work in browser like most Google users because that's where they find their word processing application, their spreadsheet application, and also their PowerPoint presentations or their presentation application. And working with Teams, we give you that functionality. What I really like and what's coming, I know that the new Yammer is in private preview currently, and it's probably releasing middle of the year, so Q4 for Microsoft. Having that Yammer experience now available to you inside of Teams for enterprise social is a big thing for everyone. And then last but not least, being able to roll up all your tasks inside a team. So managing tasks inside a team, be it an Outlook task, be it a planner task, be it a SharePoint task, you now have a single pane for all your tasks inside a Teams. Conversations about not only L'Oreal, but everyone else that's been working with Teams. And it's great to hear from Microsoft about what the other organizations are doing with Teams. And if you head over to Microsoft.com, just do a search for case studies, and you'll be able to find all this information around how other organizations in your specific industry vertical is using Microsoft Teams. And it's great to not be, everyone talks about early adopters versus the bell. I mean, we all know about the bell in the curve. Right now, we're trying to flatten the curve. And that's generally where I suppose, not generally, it's where the vast majority sits. Because bleeding edge, you usually bleed. That's why they call it bleeding edge. So when we look at what the rest of the world, because there's 42 million daily active users of Teams, there must be quite a few organizations that are using it efficiently and effectively. Go have a look at what organizations in your industry vertical are actually doing with Teams. Moving on, I'd like to talk a bit about the meeting experience. I mean, everyone is really interested in how organizations are using Teams, especially today, to conduct meetings. I can tell you this much. We use Teams every day. I've got a team of architects that are either building solutions or designing solutions for most of our customers. And we jump on a Teams call every morning to have a stand-up to just say where we are, what the blockers were, what our successes were, and do they need help from me to get over some hurdles that they're experiencing through a blocker. And it's vitally important to us to work with Teams because I get to stay in contact with my team. I mean, Microsoft Teams is the hub for teamwork, and we get to chat every day. I get to check in with them, making sure that they're okay, reaching out to them if they need anything from me, and jumping on a call if they need some advice or some help with the problem that they're having. So let's have a look at what the meeting experience actually looks like inside of Teams. Now, there's a few ways, and Microsoft has been calling it intelligent communication for a while now. We've also heard of unified comms, and for those coming from an old Skype background, we used to call it UCS, Unified Communication Server. And Microsoft has gone full circle working with Teams. Also know that Teams is not based on Skype. Teams actually is complete new infrastructure, so it's not been rolled out to the old Skype infrastructure. And well, I think that's a good thing because a lot of people have been complaining about Skype for the longest time. And Skype Online, or Skype for Business Online, is actually being retired this year. Microsoft has said that if their customers are still using Skype for Business server, Microsoft will still invest in the product. It's 2020. The last product releases for on-prem was 2019. So we see Skype for Business Server 2019, Exchange 2019, SharePoint 2019, and I forget and obviously Office 2019 for organizations that still work with on-prem. So I don't know if they are going to release another version of Skype or in fact another version of SharePoint on-prem, Exchange, or Office 2019. I mean, right now, everyone's downloading Office Pro Plus as part of their Office 365 subscription, if you qualify for that plan. So Microsoft's really split their meeting experience into a few ways of doing this. One, we talk about standard meetings. We can also do live events for Town Hall. There are calling plans where you can dial into a meeting like you used to be able to do with Skype, and then also the devices that provide a richer meeting and meeting room experience. There are 4 different types of meetings inside of the organization. I mean, we all used to scheduling a Zoom meeting, possibly. I don't know if anyone's been using Zoom or Citrix, WebEx, a GoToMeeting, and also you have the same rich experience when it comes to scheduling a Teams meeting. It's available to you in Outlook. You can select, I want to schedule a Teams meeting, and it will actually put join the Teams meeting link inside of Teams. And what's nice about that is you're not only limited to people who have Teams rolled out inside of the organization, especially when you're working with external parties. They can say join, and they'll be able to use Teams in the web. They don't have to download the client. What's quite cool is you have a way of recording these meetings as well, which we haven't really touched on, but being able to record a meeting so that you can reference it later is available to you out of the box. There's also ad hoc meetings, and we're actually starting to use these ad hoc meetings inside of Teams because we want to provide the organization with a water cooler, or as me, I'm an ex-smoker, so I still vape with people at the organization. We've got quite a big vaping fraternity. But instead of, because we can't go congregate outside at the smoking area and having a cigarette currently, we can now click and say meet now, and people can join that meeting and we can conversate and have a virtual sort of smoke session. I know that's in bad taste, but people congregate that way, right? So you can now have one-on-one meetings, or you can have one-to-many meetings just by clicking the meet now button in the channel that you're in, and people can join it ad hocly. There are channel meetings. You can then also, when you schedule a meeting, you can say what channel that's available in. And for people that are working inside of the organization, that way you can actually do it using that functionality. The last type of meeting you can have is a live event. And I don't think we really use town halls as a meeting platform in South Africa currently. But in the US, there's a lot of town hall meetings, and you can have up to, I think it's 10,000 people dialing into a live event for town hall meetings. It doesn't require a plug-in for Teams or anything like that. You can literally join the conversation, and it's quite neat. And also what's nice about that, there's a moderated Q&A manager, pretty much the same way that we're doing this webinar. You'll be able to use live events for that functionality. There was something that I wanted to talk about specifically around these live events. The other thing to note, when you actually have meetings inside of Teams, you're limited to 250 participants per meeting, and that's why something like a live event, if you've got more than 250 people, you would then schedule a live event instead of using a standard Teams meeting, because you've got so many people joining the meeting. There's a lot of conversation around on the interwebs currently, and the Twitterati's around, but Zoom gives you 30 different images of people talking at the same time. I mean, that's very, very confusing. I don't know if I'd be able to keep up with that. The view that you have in Teams is the one that I showed earlier on, where there's 4 people participating from a video perspective, and whoever speaks after that, they would then slide into that view. So it's really around focusing on the current conversation, not having 12 or 30 windows inside of your view, because you're just going to get confused. So when someone speaks, that person would pop up to the top, and whoever spoke before that would move to the right, and so forth, so on. And that's really how the Teams meeting experience outside of live events is available to you when you start looking at meetings inside of Microsoft Teams. And why is meetings important inside of Microsoft Teams? Because it's a new approach to the way we used to work, or the way we currently work. So think about it, right? You go and you walk into a meeting, and typically what happens is you go in and you've got someone to scribe and make notes. And during that meeting, you're making sure that everyone is heard, and generally what happens is someone speaks and it stops there. And then after that, being able to track what's going on. In today's world, you've got such a rich experience when it comes to working inside of Teams. You get to schedule the meeting. You get to make sure that people can start sharing content before they move into the meeting. You might be talking about the latest ad campaign for a retailer, and you'll be able to share that information inside that same Teams meeting around that. During the meeting, you can actually start co-authoring documents that you want to update, because you're generally talking about changing something, and you can actually do that while that is happening. What's also nice about it is you can follow along using stuff like closed captioning, and Microsoft likes to talk about. It's actually funny. I've done a few presentations using closed captioning, and South Africans have got such a flat tone and a flat dialect that it's interesting to watch what it actually brings up in the closed captioning. It usually happens on the top of the meeting when you actually talk through that. And also after that, you can review, like I said earlier on, what's going to happen is you can hit the record button, and you can actually go through what people were saying in real time, and you can actually go through. What's also nice is In a Teams meeting, you can use products like whiteboards, so you can annotate and you can draw, and everyone can participate in that with drawing. You've got great inking tools available to you, and what's nice about that is the meeting actually creates a chat window, so people can still talk in the context of the meeting as if they were living inside of a team. And I think that's really great because you want to contextualize the conversation. We use Teams for our user groups, and why we do that, because once a month we get together and we have a bunch of people talking about tech, right? And for that hour or two, people's excited about it, and they might have questions, all of those things. But the minute they walk out the door, that information's gone. They are no longer conversating. How do they get back to asking a question should they think of something the next day? And Teams provides us with that mechanism to have conversations not only during the meeting, but also conversate and collaborate about that meeting topic. And I think that's invaluable in today's world where we want to keep that conversation going. And I like to call it chat-based information management because it's really about not only ideating, but also carrying that conversation in that meeting life cycle from beginning all the way to the end. Some innovations that are coming, you can read the slide. I'm not going to go too much through the slide, but what's available to you today, where it's going, and what is actually coming to you soon. And it's at the rate that Microsoft releases features, it's difficult for me to keep up as someone that spends a lot of time in this world. So why Teams? Why Teams meetings? Live captioning is what I spoke about earlier on. You can transform not only the way people work with a laptop or with a mobile phone, but you can also have a rich meeting room experience. There's audio conferencing, so people can actually dial in via PSTN, like you had with Skype, where if you don't have an application or you don't have a feature, a smartphone, you can actually now dial in with a dial-in number. Being able to share that files that you are working with, no longer is someone making notes or typing up something on a document that they're now emailing you. They can actually create that file experience inside of Teams, and they can share it with everyone that's been part of that meeting easily, as easy as uploading a document to that meeting conversation. And also being able to utilize the enterprise-grade security that comes with Microsoft Teams and also Microsoft 365, that entire ecosystem. And part of that conversation is really around how we provide a rich, full fidelity experience to people sitting inside of the meeting as if they were living in other products inside of your Office 365 stack. You must remember that Teams provides that full fidelity experience to users. So you tap into all of the other Office 365 products inside of Microsoft Teams. Features that are shipping, and funnily enough, I had a friend of mine ask me 2 days ago, well actually, was it 2 days? It might have been today. I don't even know what day it is. I think it's day 5 of lockdown. It's like that period between Christmas and New Year where nobody knows what day it is. We just know that there's a lot of food in the fridge. But he actually asked about background blur, and everyone's worried about background blur. Background blur is available. It's where you can blur your background. You can see my background. I'm actually using a 24mm Canon lens to record this, and it's, if it makes any sense to the camera people on it, it's using an f-stop of 2.8, so you get a little bit of bokeh in the background, and that's what you're seeing currently. It's a bit fuzzy. With background blur, you can actually blur your entire background, and people are now wanting custom backgrounds. That is coming. If you are not, if it's not available to you currently, it's probably releasing in the next month or so. If you don't want to wait, go have a look at, just Google Snapchat camera for Microsoft Teams. You can actually use Snapchat's camera features with the little horns and weird little pictures. You can actually use that with Microsoft Teams. You can actually use it with any product that's going to connect to your webcam. Multi-window, we said, is coming, and we've got everything else that comes with it, like live captions, and live captions is available today. I think you just need to enable it at your tenant. The next thing I want to talk about is Teams calling. And we've actually seen quite a big push for direct routing inside of Teams, because people want to use Teams the way they've been using the other VoIP solutions. And we've actually got a solution offering around direct routing in a day to get you up and running inside of Microsoft Teams to work with traditional calling plans. So we know Microsoft Teams is the hub for teamwork inside of Microsoft 365, but how do we extend that to being able to make a traditional terrestrial, I don't even know a trunk call inside of Microsoft Teams? So you're sitting with a soft phone and you want to call someone's landline or their mobile number. You can do it inside of Microsoft Teams, and it's available as long as you have a Microsoft I think it's an M365 calling plan, and you can connect to an external session board controller or your PSTN gateway, if you want to call it that, where you can actually use the Teams interface to call a landline or call a mobile phone. And you generally have to enable it for users, assign them a M365 call phone system license. I think that's what it's called. Microsoft tends to change it all the time, and we've had difficulty finding it in the Office 365 Admin Center. And what this gives users is the ability to make those calls, right? You've got VoIP phones and it works in the same thing. It converts data to voice and it breaks out with your trunk. You now have that availability inside of Teams. So it's really about taking that rich experience from Teams and extending it to not only your soft phone on your desktop when you've got a headset on, but also extending it to your mobile device. So you can now make a call from Teams inside of the mobile app on iOS or Android, and also providing organizations with, and we've actually just rolled out some Yealink, I think they're T85s, to our salespeople so that they can actually make traditional telephone calls from their desktop. And it's available to everyone. Now, knowing that we have that available to everyone, we've also got audio conferencing facilities, and I spoke about that earlier on, where you can actually dial in and join the call. If you don't have a Teams app on your mobile phone, or your mobile phone's locked down where you can't deploy additional apps because it's a company provided phone, you can actually now dial in to have that experience as if you were sitting inside of the Teams call. It's available across the world. It's available in South Africa as well, and you get dial-in numbers so that people can join that who do not have the Teams client, especially when you're dealing with external parties. And this is the thing that I was talking about, Microsoft Phone System License. You need to enable that. You don't need specific hardware for this. If you are using session board controllers like Audio Codes and a few of the other products out there, you can literally just connect to the phone system, spinning up some direct routing into your phone system, and then dial out through that using your session board controller. We use the Audio Codes platform inside of Microsoft Azure, and it's something to consider when looking at moving your VoIP system from, let's say, Cisco or one of the other third-party providers to Microsoft Teams. Remember I said earlier on that Teams is your single pane of glass into your backend system. It's the everything source. It's your portal, and Microsoft has extended this to making traditional terrestrial trunk calls through Microsoft Teams so that the user never needs to leave that ecosystem. And when we look at it, it's available from Microsoft certified providers. We're one of those providers as Tangent Solutions, so you can reach out to us and we'll come have a conversation with you about doing an existing assessment on what your telephony solution looks like and how we can actually extend that inside of Teams using phone plan as well as the phone system and what devices you have inside of your organization. I'm not going to run through too many direct routing. We do not have a calling plan in South Africa, and that's why you'd have to go through a third-party provider to make these calls. And it's quite easy because as long as you've got a session board controller like Audio Codes, be it a physical device inside of your organization or a device sitting inside of even AWS, you can now connect that to Teams and then use your calling minutes from whatever calling provider you currently have, be it MTN, Vox, whoever's selling you airtime, we can connect to that and we'll provide you with that facility inside of Teams. Some resources available to you as part of what you need to consume after this. If you are interested in looking at Microsoft Teams and you don't want to connect with us directly, there's some technical documentation, and like we said in the beginning of the webinar, we'll share this with you so that you can actually just click on the link. There's a great help center available to you for productivity from a productivity perspective, it is available to you. There's a great Teams Champion platform through the Adoption Hub. So have a look at how people are using Teams and what the use cases are for Teams. There's also a bunch of technical documentation on docs.microsoft.com about how to roll out not only Office 365, but enable Teams and enable stuff like guest access and external access to your platform. There's also a monthly newsletter through using the tech community, and I'll talk about that in a later show. And then also you can go and have a look at what's available from a Microsoft 365 perspective around what's being released for Teams in the public roadmap available to you. Closing thoughts from my side. Teams has come a long way in 3 years. I think Microsoft and for those that are South African on this webinar, I like to refer to Microsoft as the Jacques Kallis of IT. It's the perfect all-rounder. And funnily enough, when you start looking at Gartner quadrants, you'll notice that Microsoft is in the top right-hand corner. Oh, which side are you watching? Because you'd be watching this and it looks like your left-hand side. But they're in the top right-hand corner as industry leaders for not only telephony and collaboration, but for all the other products that's available to you inside of Microsoft Teams. Teams is definitely the hub for Microsoft 365. Forget the teamwork side of things. But it's the one way that you touch all of Microsoft products without having to log into SharePoint or log into OneDrive or log into Stream, which this is actually when you record a video inside of Teams, it actually sits inside of Stream, which is the new Office 365 video portal. So think YouTube. Teams provides you with access to all of Microsoft products. You can access mail through Teams because you can send a mail into Teams right from Outlook, and there's going to be bi-directional communication between Teams and Outlook. You can access Office, the traditional Office desktop applications through Teams, through Word Online, PowerPoint Online, and Excel Online. You can access workflow tools like Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Virtual Agents inside of Teams. You can access Power BI for rich dashboarding. You can access To-Do, which is your task management tool inside of that. You can access Planner. You can access your calling features, which used to sit inside of Skype, inside of Teams. So it's really the single pane of glass into your productivity suite. Like I said, SharePoint for rich content management, for rich intranets. You can access Yammer for your enterprise social. So when you look at Teams from how do you provide a single pane of glass, the single point of entry, this front door into your collaborative ecosystem, Teams really is the platform. And on the back of that, you've got the rich administrative console that is inside of Office 365 to manage from an IT perspective your entire environment. And you've got that rich security and compliance features that are available to you in Office 365 extended to Teams. So it's really the application of choice when it comes to using Microsoft 365, not just Teams inside of your organization. Thank you for listening to me today. I hope you enjoyed that. It's difficult to say where Teams is going. At this rate, 5 years from now, the only thing you're going to know is Teams. You're not going to worry about all the ancillary services that comes with Office 365. We already don't talk about SharePoint as much as we used to. But this is the platform of choice. So thanks for spending some time with me. I'll catch you on the other side for Q&As. If you need to get hold of me, you can mail me alistair@tangentsolutions.co.za. You can find me on the social medias. If you're on an Insta, if I'm not on Snapchat or TikTok, I'm actually on Instagram, Twitter, probably the easiest way to get hold of me. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm @AlistairPugin. Find me on the social medias, and I'm happy to talk to you. And if you really want to come to us, you can't, because we're probably going to be in lockdown for more than just 3 weeks, but we are actually at the campus. And thanks for listening. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for your participation in this webinar, and we hope to see you in the next one. If you have any other questions, we will now give some time for you to ask them. Your questions, however, will not appear in the chat. They will be recorded, collated, and answered in due course, and you will receive an email with the answers to the questions not answered in the presentation.
Thanks all for joining. We'll be sending out a follow-up emails over the next week or two, and we'll chat to everyone soon. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.